approximately shoulder width, and that they're on the outside of their patella to begin with. When we rock them, they're likely to come out of that, but at least we kind of start in that position. Okay, so we're standing hip level, left foot up, fits right at the lumbosacral junction, and make contact and then rock. Get a good rock going, and just notice that their shoulders and even their head might be moving a little bit. Definitely down to their feet. You can see the rock. We're going to slide across and change feet. Continue the rocking. Let's just slide back and repeat that, just to be comfortable moving back and forth. We'll do it a little shorter this time. So slide across and repeat. And with the right foot. Okay, we'll let it get to a halt. And we're going to step between their knees with the right foot, and then left foot onto their foot, and then your right foot across their foot, and then we're going to walk the other foot, and we're going to walk on the feet, looking away. So using your arch initially, makes it softer, and it's just like you're walking in place. Move around, but then we're going to shift the focus to our heels. So your heel on their heel, assuming you can reach, and then come on down to their arch with your heel onto the ball and toes. And we forgot to make sure that they weren't right at the edge of the futon, but we'll walk right off the toes, turn around, and step onto their feet with the ball of our foot as the primary contact and start walking this way. So we can easily balance on our heels. Here, unless you're right at the edge. And try to walk around, cover the whole foot. And then let's start all the way up at the heel. Get your toes on the inside and really push out on the heels. And then you can be a little more focused with the ball of your foot, or even get your toes, hook your big toes, and get a little more specific pressure, especially in the arch area and bubbling spring. And then again, we're kind of walking backwards and gonna come off the toes. Okay, turn to your right, and right foot's gonna step across their arch with your toes on the outside, and there's your balance. And then you bring your other foot up behind the knee, or you can start on the calf. We're gonna brush down, slow brush. Just 3 or 4 times. Then we're gonna jiggle. So meanwhile, your right foot's got their foot totally stable, and that's what we need for the jiggle to work. Take it right up onto the heel. Then we're gonna step up to the knee and to the outside, and we're just below the knee actually, and we're gonna do our first wedge press, working down. Mostly you've got the lateral head of the gastroc that you're working. And as you get past the gastroc, you start to use the edge of your foot more, and you can curl right up to the calcaneum. It's right on the Achilles there. And then we go back to the knee, This time we're on top, so your heel gets more of the medial head of the gastroc. Yeah, remember our receivers. You can signal anytime anything's a little too much for you. Just pat the mat. And again, curve your side of your foot into the heel at the bottom. Then back to the top. We're going to brush again, but this time it's going to be a quick brush with a bump against the calcaneum. Just bring your foot all the way to your leg. And one more of those. Then we step out, slide off their foot, spin around, step across the other foot, and right foot up by the knee, and it's a slow brush. So that can start out just very light, but as you get into it, kind of feel what their calf is like, you can put a little more pressure in there. Then we're going to rock and jiggle. And step up into the outside, the wedge. Press. So just moving a little less than a foot or heel width each time, so it's more or less a continuous press right on down and finishing with the edge of your foot. And back to the top. We're on top this time, getting that medial head. Okay, and brush and bump. Out, slide off their foot, spin around. And we're going to step between the ankles, bend down, pick up their right ankle, maybe open the leg a little bit, put your left foot on the back of the thigh just above the knee. And we're going to hold the foot with both hands and pump. Pushing the heel toward the sit bone. On the release, we get this little flop of the ankle. You can also move your foot up a little bit once you feel how loose they are and get a little more stretch of the knee. Okay. And maybe a good half a dozen of those, maybe more. And then we'll finish with the leg at 90 degrees. We're going to cup the heel and the foot, hold the leg down and lift up on that. That kind of opens the ankle and the knee. We'll step to the outside, cradle the heel, walk the foot down, traction, stretch, and drop. And spin around. We're still between the legs. We just bend over and pick up the other one. Right foot behind the knee. And both hands at the foot, so we're stretching the ankle. Yeah, try both hands together there, Rachel. See how in my thumb? Yeah, there you go. So, and we can get some pretty good pressure on the thigh with that right foot, even though that's not the primary agenda. Definitely works those hamstrings. Hamstrings always seem to be tight. Okay, and pull, step out, walk it down, traction, drop, spin around. We're between the legs. We're going to bend down, pick up both ankles, and pull their knees together, squat down, clamp their knees together with yours, and we're gonna, so your hands are on the tibia to begin with, and just pushing both heels towards the glutes. And kind of loosen them up that way. Then we're going to grab the foot and we're going to cross their ankles, and by crossing our arms, make sure you hold their knees together. So we want to stretch those medial collateral ligaments, but not overstretch them. Okay, good. And then the last one, fingers over the toes, and we're going to stretch that way. Then release, stand up, open up, and widen their stance. We're going to step up between the knees. And it doesn't really matter which foot we'll start with. But let's just start with the right foot. And we're going to do the horseshoe press around the thigh and glutes. And just rocking your weight into your foot, just kind of leaning into them, pivoting on the back foot as necessary to keep a good angle. And so this first one is pretty much just right on the back of the body, back of the thigh. But now as we come back, maybe I'll shift to a little bit more of my heel being involved and get a little bit more of the medial aspect of the thigh. So this is not exactly the same places that I'm pressing. And we're also going to stop at the sacrum, and we're going to rock back, and maybe even the back foot needs to rock back. You need a better angle, and we're going to do that coccyx pump. And see, you should be able to see their head moving. Okay, and then when we're done, we just continue with the horseshoe press. Get back to the knee, just right to the epicondyle, and we'll step off and then go with the left foot, starting on the left side, and we'll repeat. So again, the first pass is more on top. Lightening up appropriately as you get close to the knee. It's really just that last one that you maybe need to worry very much at all. And then we're just going to reverse it again, maybe emphasizing a little bit more of our heel. We can get that medial aspect. We're not as far around as the adductors, but we're definitely getting that a little different arc, a little different sweep. And again, we'll stop at the sacrum and do the coccyx rock. So really open up the dumai, the governing vessel, and then continue. Nice and smooth and even. We get to the knee and we'll step off. Bend down again, pick up the right ankle. And this time left foot to the left hip. Then right foot onto the sacrum, and we'll pull the leg up with us, kind of standing up, pulling it away, and then put it back down, and do it, repeat it a number of times. So you stabilize the pelvis. Your foot's right on the sacrum, so the SI joints are free to move. So just a nice hold on the dorsum of the foot is what we're interested in there. Maybe half a dozen. We can move the foot around a little bit, up and down, and sometimes I will go to the low back. And also, if they're kind of holding on or having a little trouble with that, first of all, ask if it's too much, but you can also dangle the knee back and forth, help them let go. Okay, now, right foot steps between the knees. Left foot's going to swing all the way around to the outside. Left hand gets their heel, walk it down, traction, and drop. Spin around, step up. Left hand picks up the left ankle. Right foot to the right hip. Left foot onto the sacrum, lift. And maybe dangle a little bit in there. Anytime it feels like it might be helpful. So, yeah, trying to keep your back relatively straight and not too hunched over. So unless, and I'll just demonstrate this, sometimes if you want to reach between your knees, that definitely bends you over and get a hold of their heel. Sometimes that's helpful. Okay? And step back between the knees. Swing the right foot around to the far side, toes pointed footward, spin around, walk it down, traction, and drop. Spin around, we're between the ankles again, pick up both feet and step between their knees, and now with your legs, pick them up like a wheelbarrow. And this is definitely one, start with the dangle of the knees. Then alternate. And let's get a little up on our tiptoes. So we get a little more stretch. Is that about all your low back wants there, Remy?
No, I mean.
You're okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so as they loosen up or we feel like we can do it, you can lift more. But the idea is that you don't need them to help. So when you feel them start to help, I usually just back off. Okay, but we can definitely play around with that. And even just a little bit of lift. Let's also just bounce, like a shake. That's a nice one too. And then we'll walk backwards, close the feet down to back to shoulder width. Make sure the heels are out. And we're going to step between the knees with one foot, hands on either side of the sacrum with the other. Then the other foot comes up on the thigh right there at the gluteal fold. Then the other one. Get your balance and stand up. Okay? Get your balance again. And then we'll rock. This is another one that arguably it's better to just be barefoot. So anytime that it would be better to not be slippery. Mm-hmm. A lot of these little booties, they have a bunch of nylon in them or polypropylene. They tend to get slippery. Okay, so now if your person's kind of tall, you can actually work down the thighs to maybe a foot width or so. You can go down a little bit. On many people, there won't be that much room to move around, and just the rocking back and forth is going to be good. Okay, then think up, dismount to the right, and we're then going to kneel down Left hand on the sacrum, right hand between the shoulder blades, right knee into the low back. And we're going to press with the knee, our lumbar press, working from the spine to the side. And, even just 3 places might be enough there. And at least 3 times, but could do more. Just trying to feel how your knee fits their low back. If they've got a lot of space there, you want to move around a little bit up and down too. Just be careful of that 12th rib and make sure that you stay inferior to it. Okay? The last one, I'm going to just walk all the way to the side and kind of slide down to the floor without pinching them. Then we'll just kneel across, spin around, change hands and knees, do the lumbar press on this side. So remember, it's really the front of your knee. And again, sometimes 2 layers of material, your pants and their shirt, is a little too much. So if you want to, roll your pants up out of the way. I'll kind of demonstrate that. So you can actually see what you're doing a little bit better. Maybe aim a little bit better. And you can maybe control the slide off a little bit better. Okay. And as we finish up with that, we're sitting down along their side, putting our right foot in their armpit, grab their wrists and pick the arm up so that the muscles are in your arch. Knee is bent, but not too much. So the foot in the armpit stretch. So we've got the traction out or all the slack out with the hands. Then we push through with the side, the edge of the foot into the axilla, right on. Not too much. And slowly releasing by keeping the traction on the arms, but lifting the knee out, and feel the arm grow, and then we're just letting the arm go down on the table. You're gonna stand up and swing their arm to the side, and we're gonna take our position kind of hip level again, right foot on the glutes. And we'll just start with a rock, not the heel, just their whole foot, kind of get them rocking first, and maybe start fanning as soon as you've got them rocking. You can fan all the way to the gluteal fold and all the way up to the iliac crest. You can move your foot around a little bit there, so you just cover the whole glutes. And then we're going to aim with the heel a little bit more right into the gluteal hollow and that key gallbladder point there. I can still kind of pivot around a little bit just because it kind of feels good in your hip. We'll bring that to a halt, and we're going to start pressing, just leaning our weight into them. And this is the alternating heel and ball, the V presses. So just being careful of the floating ribs. That's our main kind of danger zone there, and we get to it pretty fast. Once you're up onto the solid ribs, it's pretty straightforward. Just make your foot fit the curve of their body. And we'll get right on up to the scapula and shoulder joint if possible, and if you need to adjust your stance, be my guest. And we're going to start back down. So just alternating. So sometimes it's maybe a fairly big rotation, sometimes a very small rotation of your foot just to get a good angle, good contact. Come right on down to where we started on the glutes. Turn around again. So this is a up down up pattern. So 3 rounds of this should be plenty. But notice that maybe each time you go through it, they do seem to loosen up a little bit, open up. So it's definitely worth the repetition. A lot of times the first time through, it's just so different, so kind of weird. Okay, and this last time we definitely want to rotate all the way through to the axilla. And let's just brush down the arm and flatten out the fingers and see how their arm is fitting on the mat. And you have a choice then to actually have them move over if necessary, or we can work off the mat too if you're on one of the narrow mats. Also, we want the palm up there, and the arm doesn't have to be straight out, so we can compensate for the narrow mat that way too. Okay, then we're standing in the space between the arm and the torso. We're going to start with our right foot right at the axilla, using the edge of the foot, resting on your heel. We're wedge pressing, and make sure you push the tricep out of the way, that you don't trap it. We just work down to the elbow and back to the shoulder. So 3 passes of this. Let's make the second pass a little bit more the ball. And you can push the arm away too. And then the third pass, we'll try to use our ball and toes. So you can kind of wrap your toes around the top of the triceps a little bit. Okay. So the main thing, there's kind of 2 things. We want to make sure, especially on that first one, that we weren't so far underneath that we were really pressing the ulnar nerve, but the other one is just trapping the triceps. Okay, now just jump below the elbow and we'll continue on the forearm, starting with your arch as your primary contact. To the wrist, and then back to the top. We'll shift to the ball. And you don't have to make these adjustments. I just want you using different parts of your foot to get used to it and see what you like best or what seems to work best. The arch is the most generic and kind of fits across the curved surface nicely, so it's always, and it's kind of the safest one. So the third one, again, we'll kind of wrap our toes around. You're still using the ball too, but okay, so we're at the wrist. Now we're just going to continue on the hand from the wrist to the fingertips. And here can be more of a fan press. So we'll always start at the wrist. So we repress that. Okay, and then we'll step below the fingertips and work with both feet, and or the toes. We'll get the thenar and hypothenar eminences, and you can hook your toes a little bit, get those points in there, work the palm a little bit more, and just kind of generally alternating We'll walk back off the fingertips. And now step above the arm with the left foot. Use your right foot to drag their arm up to shoulder level. Then spin around, push on the wrist. We'll roll it over. And flatten out the fingers. And now we'll walk on the hand from the fingers to the wrist on this side. But basically it's the same idea. It's kind of a fan press. Then forearm from the wrist to the elbow. Arch first, and this is definitely a little bonier, so paying attention. Second pass, we'll use the ball, kind of fits nicely between the radius and the ulna. It gets those extensor muscles there rather well. And then the third pass, maybe not all that different, but trying to use your toes a little bit more. They can wrap right around the edge of the ulna. And being careful at the elbow, but now it's flat on the, it's in full extension and flat on the table, so short of some elbow injury, you should be able to put some pressure on it. But then we'll start above the elbow, our wedge press through the shoulder. Second pass with the ball. And third pass, wrap your toes. We get all the way to the acromion. Now we got to check to make sure that they're looking away from us. If they're not, have them turn their head. We're going to pivot round and put our heel right at the neck-shoulder junction, resting on the ball of your foot and toes. We're going to lever into that spot, and I'll usually just pump that a few times to begin, and then I'll start to fan across the shoulder a little bit, sort of following the supraspinatus and spine of the scapula. You should be able to feel with the back of your heel. And you can't go very far, do too much with that, but you can definitely get some lateral range. Okay, then we're going to turn around and kneel down, and hands go to the scapulas. And we'll put our knee down at the top of the thoracic curve is a pretty good place to start. And we'll walk up between the spine and the scapula back to where our heel was before that neck-shoulder junction. And we'll do this our requisite 3 times. Could always do it more, so especially if you know somebody needs a little more work in an area, always focus on it. Right now, of course, we're just trying to get the kata. Okay, and finishing that up, we're gonna sit down, and right foot pushes their arm down by their side, out of the way, maybe with their elbow out, and now that foot can hold the shoulder and deltoid, so the left foot can work across the top of the shoulder, getting the trapezius. And so your heel is just on the floor and it's just sliding along. on the mat there. I'll start with my arch, and you can push through your heel. It sort of reaches to the clavicle. But then I'll shift my focus a little bit more to the lateral edge of my foot to get a little more specificity. And again, I'm just working laterally across the top there a few times. Then swinging maybe a little bit more to the side, we're going to turn our foot sideways so your toes point toward their neck, and we can now use our toe a little bit more to really work the crest of the trapezius all the way out to the acromioclavicular V. Okay, swinging further to the side, we're going to change feet. So I'll now, let's see, you want to take your little hair thing out here. I think it'll be in the way in a minute. We're going to shift feet, so the left foot now is going to hold the top of the head. So the right foot can work the neck, and let's just start with the toes up and the arch. So we got to stabilize the head with the left foot. I'll just get maybe 1 or 2 presses there. Then using where the side of the foot, you can probably get 3 places on the neck, right up to just snug up against the occiput. Then turn your foot sideways, and we can use our toe again right along the side of the cervicals and get the trapezius there on the neck. So just like you might do with your thumb. Okay, then both feet, monkey feet, just squeezing the head, the scalp, and working up the back of the head and all around, and shifting sideways, kind of walking on our hands, just moving, not being in a hurry, but just kind of keep scooting along, using your arch, your toes, any part of your foot that you can sort of squeeze with. We'll get to the top of the head. Make sure you get the side down close to the ears. Then we'll let go and have them turn their head for us. You can help with the hair. Get it out of their face. And then we'll just pick up right where we left off. There we're overhead. But we'll keep squeezing, pressing and working leftward with our hand walk, scooting our butt around. Just kind of cradling their head and giving them as good a massage. I don't know if you've looked at any of the acupuncture charts, but there's a lot of channels and a lot of points on the head. So just kind of squeezing this way kind of stimulates everything. Okay, now I'll use my hands here to scoop the hair out of the way. Now the right hand is going to hold the top of the head so that my left foot can work the neck. And again, we'll start with the arch, just pressing. Can't move it much, but maybe you can move it a little bit. But then we'll start with the side of our foot. We can get more of an edge, a little more precise pressing, and probably get at least 3 distinct places there from the shoulder, mid-neck, and to the occiput. And then we'll turn our foot sideways, and we can work with the toes. little bit more right alongside the spine. On the mat side, working that side of the trapezius up to the occiput. Okay, and we'll pivot back overhead. Left foot cradles the shoulder now, so the right foot can work across the top of their shoulder. And just slide the heel along the mat. And use your arch, get the traps that way, and then a little more specifically with the side of the foot. Then turn sideways and use your toes. Working the crest of the trapezius. You can get a little bit posterior to that as well. But probably can't, especially with your big toe, can't go much more anterior than that. Okay, and we'll finish up all the way out at the V. Okay, and up on your knees, hands on the scapula. We'll do our knee press. So the traps on the back, that whole space, all the erectors and rhomboids. 3 passes minimum. So we're really working with the front of our tibia, and even think about the tuberosity. Some tuberosities stick out quite prominently and are a pretty good thumb. You can press pretty specifically with, and you have to just see how yours is. Okay, we're finished with the knee. We're gonna stand up and spin around and put our heel into the neck-shoulder junction. And fits right where our knee was kind of leaving off with effectiveness. And we can just pump it a few times, but then start to fan around, follow the supraspinatus, at least to the kind of mid scapula level. You can feel the spine of the scapula under your heel. Okay, we'll spin around and let's reach inside their arm and drag it up to shoulder level. Roll it over, and Rumi, I think maybe you need to move a little bit that way to get your hand. There we go. Okay, so we want the palm down and the arm pretty horizontal. We're going to start at the fingertips with the left foot. So we're working the yang channels. So they go from the fingertips back to the torso. So we'll do the fan press. Then the forearm from the wrist to the elbow. Arch first. That wedge press is just so easy and effective. Second pass, let's shift more to the ball of our foot. fits right up through the middle of the arm. And then the third pass, we wrap the toes around a little bit, still using the ball as well though. Okay, and then we will continue from the elbow to the shoulder. So back to the arch first. And especially, the upper arm gets bigger, so sometimes that's your most effective way to make the most contact. But then we'll try the ball. Second pass. And then ball and toes for the third pass. Especially this one, we should be able to be precise enough to get all the way up to the acromion. Then we're going to step across with the left foot. Right foot maybe drags the arm down a little bit, rolls it over so the palm is up, and you can even bend the elbow if you need to. Let's stand across the fingers and just brush down the yin channels. There's a kind of opening there. Then you can stay on the fingers or just step off. And we'll now start our wedge press at the axillary fold. So now this one's a little trickier. Remember, you got to make sure you push the triceps out of the way. You don't trap them. But I presume your partner will tell you right away that's distinctly uncomfortable. Okay, second pass. So we got 3 yin channels, 3 yang channels, so just from a channel perspective we would do it 3 times, but that's also just a nice number of repetitions. It's sufficient, satisfies a kind of minimum without overdoing it, but really lets us settle into it, lets them settle into it. Okay, on the forearm, from the elbow to the wrist. Three times there. Way to the hand, so you really did get the wrist, and then third pass. And now the hand itself, you can usually just do the fan, pivoting on your heel. Get the wrist to the fingertips. And you can always slide and step if you need, if you feel like you're losing the little finger there a little bit, not getting enough on it, then sure. And get that included. We'll step around to the end of the fingers and use both feet on the hand, the palm, and the eminences. You can hook your big toes and stimulate. And then walk backwards to come off the fingers. Okay, we'll step into the space, and if you need to get the arm a little out of the way, fine. Left foot onto the glutes, and we're gonna start with a little rock there, and then we'll start fanning so we get the whole gluteal region in the gluteal hollow. Because you can still kind of fan around a little bit, but you're mostly really focusing on that point. I just like to pivot my foot. It seems like it makes it a little more effective. And we'll bring that to a halt and start our presses, our B presses. Just start right there. And that gives us a few of them before we get to the waist and the floating ribs, where we need to be a little more gentle, both pressure-wise and maybe a little bit slower. There. And you can either take it all the way to the shoulder, and if you needed to, step up and reposition yourself, or sometimes I stop a little bit short. I'm just at the scapula, and I just change directions, head back down. Moving at a pace that really lets them breathe. They can reasonably keep up with you exhaling when you press without hyperventilating. Now back up again. So that time we come all the way down onto the glutes and the pelvis, and then start back up for the third and final round. This one, we definitely want to pivot right on around to the axillary fold, connected to the arm work that we just finished a minute ago. Then we'll step off. And sit down. Left foot in the armpit this time. Grab the wrists and get the biceps in your arch. Take the slack out. Then pushing through with the lateral edge of the foot. And to get your knee as close to straight as you can. Hold for just a sec, then start to raise the knee. Keep the traction on, just pulls the shoulder down, lengthens the arm. And at the end, we just lay the hand down on the mat. And we're standing back up, getting the arm out of the way. And stepping in close with the right foot, we'll put the left foot up on the sacrum. And we'll start with the brushing down the back and kind of smoothing their shirt out. And let's step across and do it with the right foot. I can get both sides and the spine this way, and then and we'll make sure that we've got room on this side. The arm doesn't need to be that far up, but just that I've got room. Let's step back to the right side and the right foot with the left foot on the sacrum, and we want the ball of our foot right at the lumbosacral junction, and you want to feel that the spinous processes are between your toes, and ultimately is going to be between the heads of your first and second metatarsals. If you want to use your hands on your knee, you can, or you can try it. Maybe we're going to do this 4 times all together. So you can start maybe with the lighter one without the hands, just working up the spine. Yeah, it's a good place to maybe check in. Just make sure that they're good. We'll just come up to the top of the thoracic curve and then head back down. Around. Remember, because we're going to do this 4 times, you don't have to worry about it too much. Between the 4 passes, we should get every vertebral level pretty well, but we don't want to take too big a step here. Okay, when we get back to the lumbosacral junction, let's change sides and feet. And maybe this time we'll get a little bit more weight in it by putting our hands on our knees. We'll just shift a little more body weight. Check in again if that's still okay with them. Most of the time it's welcome, and we know that now that if we can actually stand on their back with all our weight, that this is really not so dangerous. Okay, and so we get to the top, just reverse, come back down. Yeah, maybe, Aaron, have your heel lower. It's almost like your foot's flat, but the heel isn't actually touching. But you probably don't need to lift it up much. It seems like it's harder to control there. It takes more muscle tension on your part. Okay? Good. Torsos are different lengths there, so we're going to maybe arrive at slightly different times, but this is when we go up and down twice in the second round with the upper body weight added. Let's transfer back to the other side. So we keep alternating our feet. We may need to smooth the shirt out again. There. But then, so this time, we're going to be on the far side of the spine. We're going to use either the MP knuckle of the big toe or the big toe itself, hook it first. We're going to go up the jaji and then out a little bit down the inner bladder line. Okay? So otherwise it's kind of the same. But we're using the big toe, basically. Hopefully this fits right in that jaji valley. And you can use your hands or not, whatever seems more workable. When you get to the top, we just pivot out ever so slightly to pick up the crest of the erectors. Coming back down on the inner bladder channel. And on those, we are trying to get a point at each vertebral level. So fairly small steps. We shift to the other side and bring the right foot up. And if you need to, smooth the shirt out again. Or sometimes it just feels nice too, in the smoothing. But now we're going to do the same thing now on their right side, so the far side of the spine. We're going to go up the jaji. pivot out and come down the bladder. So if you're using the hooked big toe, that's fairly specific and therefore a sharper tool. So you may not need as much pressure weight-wise. But again, just so long as your partner knows they can signal you anytime to lighten up, back off, then you're good to just feel your way through it. Okay, we get back to the iliac crest, and maybe we'll smooth out again. Last time, I sometimes do a little jiggle like this, especially in the lumbars. I think that feels good. It kind of taut, stretches the skin both ways, and then smooth it out. And we're on the left side already, so we just pivot and bring our left foot up. We'll rock. Slide across, rock with the right foot. Nice vigorous rock here, and then we'll let it come to a halt. We step between their knees with the right foot, step onto their foot, or if you need to widen their stance a little bit before you do, or push their heel out before you stand up on it, then do so. And then we're walking on the feet. Again. And just like at the beginning, we'll start with our arch, then go to our heels. A little more specific, a little more detail there. Get right down to the toes and walk off. Turn around, step onto their feet with the ball of your foot and walk this way. Make sure you push their heels out with your toes, and then you can use your toes in the arch more. And finish up on bubbling spring, working bubbling spring with your big toes. Really massage them open, and then we'll step up a little bit, putting your bubbling spring right over their bubbling spring, and we'll just stand to close. Go inside and just really focus on their feet, bubbling spring. Ground them out. But also, here we are at the end. We'll just energetically say goodbye. And then you can either just pivot off or just walk off backwards, whatever feels good to you. Okay. Thank you. Why don't you talk to each other, get some feedback.